Now let's take a look at how we can record some tests using Fiddler. You can download Fiddler from Fiddler-video-7. Once you go there, simply click on the download link and it will very quickly install. In order to use it for creating a web performance test, we want to launch our application just as we have before. So here is our familiar ASP.NET MVC music store. You can see it running at localhost 26641. And then we'll launch Fiddler. Fiddler looks like this. By default, it's going to immediately start recording traffic. I've turned that off for the moment, so this capture traffic is turned off. If this ever occurs and you need to turn it back on, simply come up to File, Capture Traffic, or hit the F12 key. Once it's capturing traffic, by default, it will be recording traffic from any application on your computer. This means that any instant messenger clients or browsers that have AJAX calls or other things that are running and maybe checking for updates will all be recorded as part of your session. So as you can see here, I have a couple of other applications running, and while Fiddler is sitting here, it's capturing any of the data that these things are transmitting via HTTP from my computer. Now, when we're recording our web performance test, we don't want to have any extraneous requests included. So one of the first things we're going to want to do is establish a process filter that will make sure that our recording is only recording HTTP session data from one particular application. So I'm going to go ahead and remove all these sessions, turn off capturing for a moment, and set this so that it's on the left side of the screen, and we'll set IE so it's on the right side of the screen. Now from here I can go back and find that process filter menu item here, and this will let me drag it onto the application that I want to filter on. And now, as you can see, I'm only filtering on iExplore process ID 12328. So at that point I can turn capture traffic back on and I can do my test. So we'll make this a little bit bigger, and you can watch over here and you'll see as I click through my application what happens. So we'll start off by going back to the home page. We'll click here. This loads the home page back up, and then we'll just do a simple browse through the store test. So we'll look at a couple of different albums, look at some other pages, add something to the cart, and we'll say that's enough. We'll finish there. Now you can see what's been recorded from my application. The next step, if I want to use this in Visual Studio, is simply to export this as a Visual Studio web performance test. In order to do that, all we need to do is go to File, Export Sessions, and we're going to export all these sessions. And you can select a number of different formats here. The one that we want, of course, is going to be Visual Studio Web Test. And so we'll say Next. Now it's going to ask us where we want to put this, so I'm going to say C:\dev scratch, and this will be Pluralsight on demand web test. And we'll just leave all these checked as they are. And now we have recorded our test. The next step then is to go back to Visual Studio and include this test in our application. So I can come back now into my unit test project within my MVC Music Store solution, and I want to add an existing item. And now I just need to go back to that same path where I have a Pluralsight on-demand web test. And you can see here that it's been added as a web test. We can double click and view it and see this is exactly what we recorded. And if we want, we can run the test. And it passes. Actually, it's still running, but all the individual requests have passed. And we can look at the browser and each of these requests as they come in. From here, we have the test in Visual Studio. It's a complete web test. We can do whatever we want to. We can add additional plugins to it. We can add filters and capture rules. We can go and generate code from it. We have all of the options that we would normally expect to have from a Visual Studio web test, but the recording was done without the need to have Visual Studio installed. So that's how you can take advantage of the free tool Fiddler to record tests of your applications without having to use Visual Studio.